Okay, it is 6 o'clock and I will call the special Pine Island City Council meeting to order. This once again is a virtual Zoom meeting. So all the protocol we've been following as far as not talking over each other and roll call votes will be in place. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'll start us and everybody can chime in here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy schedules. There is no consent agenda, as I understand it, Elizabeth. Is that right?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Right. So we'll move to administration and legal. We've got two items. Item A is a resolution 20-23 authorizing the granting of regulatory flexibility to local businesses. I'm going to let, it's in your packet. We've read it, but I'm going to let Elizabeth give us a little highlight there on what we're doing here.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, as you know, the governor recently introduced his guidelines allowing restaurants and bars to open, and he released the details of that last week, and he actually signed the order yesterday detailing that. And he's allowing bars and restaurants to open with outdoor seating only, and there's certain guidelines and restrictions and capacities. He did call on cities to get quote unquote creative in finding ways to accommodate this so that bars and restaurants can open. The reason we need to get creative is because of liquor license laws. They're very restrictive in both our ordinances and state. There's certain definitions that we need to do. Also, there's other ordinances within the city that it shows how bars and restaurants need to operate and their outdoor patio space. There's certain regulations that they need to follow. This resolution would make it easier for us to accommodate that. Typically, if there was any change to our ordinances, or if we needed to accommodate something like a variance against our ordinances, then that would need to appear before council every time. What this resolution would do is it would streamline that process, and it would have it streamlined through City Hall. Businesses, bars and restaurants would fill out a form, they could submit it to City Hall, and then it would go through myself. This resolution would allow me to make the decisions of what regulations in our ordinances we could bypass and how we could accommodate these bars and restaurants to be able to open with their outdoor patios. And then I would be able to grant that or make suggestions on how we could improve their plan, and that way we would not have to call a special session every single time we need to make an accommodation for our bars and restaurants.
Questions for Elizabeth? Comment.
So are we looking at this as just a temporary measure? Is this something that we're looking at allowing for a long term when it comes to some discretion?
So in the resolution, at the very last sentence, there is expiration, and that is blank. So it would be up to you in your discussion if you were to pass this to create and determine what kind of expiration you're looking for. And there's pretty strict guidelines, I guess, what kind of regulatory assessment, I guess, I would be able to have regarding businesses and the bars and restaurants. So this is definitely not a permanent fixture. It's a fix for us to be able to allow those accommodations, since most likely these outdoor patios they won't be following our ordinances strictly per se. So this would allow us to kind of bypass that, but still have some regulatory oversight over them.
Mayor, this is Bob. May I comment?
Absolutely, Bob.
Yeah, so Elizabeth has done a nice job of laying it out. I just want to add a little flavor to it. I've said before, the way we're operating is extraordinary. This is not the way cities typically operate, having meetings virtually, having an emergency declaration in place that allows us to do some other things that we normally can't do. This is not business as usual. It's not business as usual anywhere in the state of Minnesota, or frankly in the country, or really in the world. This is another example of that. And so to the council member's question about, is this temporary? I will tell you that my view would be, and I probably have expressed this view to some city client at some point, delegating this much authority to a single staff person is probably not lawful in normal times. It would not be lawful in normal times to delegate to your city administrator the power to change liquor licenses, to in effect grant variances, temporary variances from zoning setbacks, allow the use of the right of way for outdoor seating. None of that would typically be able to be done by a city administrator. Even where a city council tried to give that authority to the administrator, that would likely not be possible. So what you're doing here is partly just a product of the world we're in right now, the pandemic that we're in, but it's also an outgrowth, Mayor, of your declaration of an emergency, which was then extended by the city council. That action, which is statutorily authorized, that action changes the way you operate. You operate differently as a city in an emergency, and this is an outgrowth of the authority that you've exercised in that resolution. So necessarily, Councilmember Freeze, necessarily this has to be temporary, and it really has to run kind of along the same timeline with your declaration of an emergency, with the city's recognition of an emergency. We wouldn't be able to, at some point after withdrawing that declaration, after deciding the pandemic has passed and there isn't a public emergency anymore, we wouldn't be able to continue having this kind of regulatory flexibility exercise just through Elizabeth. So that's one. And then I am trying to be brief. I know you want to move on. I just want you to know I sent an email to Elizabeth, but I just want to reiterate what it said. I attended a virtual meeting of city attorneys around the state that the League of Cities put together. And I want to say there were about 50 city attorneys that were involved. And not to pat me or our firm on the back, but I want you to know that it was a novel idea to many of the other city attorneys on this call, the idea of granting this authority to a person to vary all of the different laws that have to be varied in order to allow this to happen. So what a lot of cities have been doing, the example I gave in the email was Stillwater. Stillwater is holding periodic special meetings like this to address each individual bar or restaurant that comes forward, and then they are modifying just the liquor license, failing maybe to understand that there are other things that are having to be modified. Again, zoning, use of the right of way, and potentially, for example, with your downtown situation, you might allow use of part of your city park property, which you wouldn't normally allow to be used for private purposes. So, I think there are going to be other cities that are probably going to take this approach and run with it. Several of my clients have already taken the step you're being asked to take. And it sounds like that this may become a little bit more of a trend because folks seemed enamored with the idea. So wanted to make those comments, Mayor. Thank you.
So Mr. Vos, may I ask, in this situation, like, I trust our city administrator to make good judgment, but in the event that,
Am I muted now?
pardon?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
We can.
Oh, I can't hear myself. Anyway, quick question. What is the shelf life on our city's emergency order? Who has that?
Mayor, council members, Mayor, just you were unable to hear. Council member Freeze had a question or a comment. So let me just quickly respond to yours. And then I think Council member Freeze was in the midst of something. And Elizabeth, jump in here to correct me, but the resolution that's proposed has built into it a provision for you as a council to in effect revoke or withdraw the authority that you would be granting to her. And to your point, Mayor, you're exactly right. I mean, clearly Elizabeth is not going to do anything that she thinks would be contrary to your intentions, your wishes, and she's not going to be doing this in secret. The fact that this is unusual is certainly true, but I'm certain that Elizabeth is going to publicize or make available her decisions. And in fact, they're all going to be written down. She's going to make those available to anybody that wants to know what's going on, including obviously you. So you have the ability to withdraw the authority if you don't like the way it's going, and she's going to make known to you exactly what's going on.
Is there any way we could attach a shelf? Does it need to have a shelf life to, or an expiration date to be legal, Bob? Should we say 30 days or whenever the emergency order comes down? And then we could renew it, couldn't we?
Yeah, Mayor and council members, that is, again, there are a number of cities I think that are looking at or have already looked at this resolution. That question has been asked, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, that's not a legal question, that's a policy question. If you want to attach a fixed date, that's fine. I didn't propose that in the original draft simply because I didn't want you to have to keep renewing or changing this resolution, but that would be fine. It does say that you can, by action of the council, would revoke the authority whenever you want. So, but if you want more certainty, you want to fix a date, that's fine.
Council, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to add, I assume we'll talk about this in a bit during the meeting, but we do have a quote from a tent company, and I believe we only get the tents until the end of June. It's really hard with how fluid things are right now to say specifically, this is how long this is going to last, because none of us know. Do we start with putting that end date on June 30th, since that's the end of our tents, and then look at both of those things again at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with whatever. I'm certainly going to follow Bob's recommendation. I just thought maybe it would be a good idea to have some kind of shelf life on it that we could renew. The only problem with renewing it is we'd have to have another meeting to do it, unless we did it in our June meeting, which is fairly early this month. I think it's like the 17th. So I don't know. I'll defer to the rest of the council, whatever they want to do.
Well, like Mr. Vos said, that what we're doing is fairly unprecedented when it comes to giving the authority like this. And he made the comment that this goes and it could go until the end of our emergency declaration. Mr. Mayor, and you had asked the question about when that deadline was, and did I miss it? Do we know what that deadline is right now for the emergency declaration?
So in our emergency declaration, it's in place until the council decides to rescind it.
Okay. And that's also going to go on for depending on how long Governor Walz puts these provisions and these executive orders in place. So we're kind of at the mercy of the state.
Yes and no. I think you can rescind the local emergency when you feel the emergency has ended here locally in Pine Island. So it's kind of a tiered. The federal emergency could last longer than the state emergency, and the state emergency could last longer than the local emergency. So they don't necessarily need to be dependent upon each other.
Depending on what the rest of the council says, I would like to make a motion that we go ahead with this resolution with a deadline of July 31st, which I believe is going to be a Friday. We would have the ability to rescind that earlier if we needed to, though, correct?
We don't have many questions on motions, but I think that's true. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be my motion to move forward with this resolution, allowing our city administrators some of the autonomy until July 31st of this year.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
And again, it is totally legal for us to put in that resolution if we were debating back and forth between an end date. We can say that our end date is when we would pull the local emergency, right?
Bob, I think that was directed to you.
Yeah, Mayor and council, sure. Yes, the short answer is yes. You could say that whenever the city's emergency declaration is withdrawn, expires, whatever, this resolution expires at the same time, that would be fine. Again, I hear you saying, I hear the maker of the motion saying, regardless of any of that, you still want to leave in there the idea that the council can at any time withdraw this authority.
Yeah,
Just a personal observation. I don't think we want to be premature in removing our emergency order. We are accumulating a file of expenditures that this has cost the city, this deal. And I think when we jerk that emergency order off it from the city standpoint, that might terminate any future expenditures. So we want to make sure the city's gotten through all the big problems financially before we go ahead and jerk that order. So just a thought. Further discussion?
Is there someone that can speak a bit more to the tent invoice that was in our packets and how we could maybe match that June deadline with the July deadline?
Yeah, that's
That's
next
the next
on the agenda.
item, Kelly.
Oh, okay, yes, sorry.
So, okay, we got a motion and a second to go ahead with the resolution 2023. We'll do a roll call vote. David,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
vote aye. Okay, then we'll move to item 2, which is exactly what you just referenced, Kelly. It's item B, request to approve funding to assist local businesses and create a temporary patio. This is kind of Mike's baby. I'm going to let Mike kind of talk a little bit about it and explain your interaction with the restaurants, Mike.
Yeah, well, it's just a matter of getting creative. I mean, being close to the restaurants and working especially through the EDA and whatnot. They don't have resources right now to get creative. So it was just a call to Elizabeth. What funds do we have that we could take a look and helping them out? And so, right, outdoor seating is fine, but obviously if it rains, and we've had a lot of rain lately, then they're back to doing nothing. So if we can hopefully put up some tents and they could possibly rain or shine, have a chance to still sell some food and alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, Mitch or Courtney, can you give us a compilation of how many people took advantage of our EDA emergency funds loans? Anybody have that information? How many businesses took part?
Mitch, do you have record of how many?
I do not have it in front of me right now, but I believe the COVID-19 specific loans, there was 2 businesses that took advantage of those.
All right.
I would have to double check that.
So the issue is where can these funds be derived from? I think Elizabeth might have some ideas. Courtney might have some ideas. We're talking about, fairly significant amount of money. If they all take advantage of it, it would help them out. And there's all kinds of restrictions they've got to follow to make this work. But
do we know how many businesses want to take advantage?
We have 4.
Okay.
Four of our 5, I would call food serving. So we're talking about Trailhead, Let's Go Tacos, the Pine Island Sports Bar, and the Legion. Betty Sue's is preferring to just continue with takeout. I did leave it open though, if she gets a couple of weeks down the road and wants to do something different. The funds we've looked at, we have $6,500 that the city sets aside to spend on Cheese Fest that we're obviously not going to spend. That $6,500 typically covers the posse, sentence to service, set up and tear down garbage, some of those kinds of things. So that, that money is there. And even if one more restaurant came, if we approve the use of those funds, even if one more restaurant came back at some point and said, hey, I'd like to do something, or there's a little bit of padding there with that money for the month of June. If something else comes up,
Are the tents going to be big enough where maybe the liquor store and the Legion can share, if they're the big tents, or is everybody going to need their own?
So I can hop in there. Everyone will need their own. One of the reasons the tents work so well is Minnesota liquor law actually states that the outdoor patio space has to be contiguous to the building. So we actually will have to create fencing. So there's a designated path that goes from the building or this front of door pretty much to this patio area. And then the city would actually be assisting these businesses in taking orange fencing to put around the tent as well, because it needs to be a designated space. So they would not be able to share any of the spaces.
Well, I'm all for helping our businesses. So,
I would agree with.
Any other
Mr.
thoughts? We're going to earmark these funds specifically for tents, Mike.
I guess, and I'm gonna leave it a little bit open-ended as far as earmark these funds to help our businesses. You know, right now, if there's 6,500 in that Cheese Fest fund, our current estimate's 4,300. I see at the June meeting us coming back with a proposal to try to fund these through July. Even if the governor opens up, let's just say 25% inside seating, that's still not enough. These restaurants, they're still going to benefit from some covered outdoor seating. And, you know, we've got an EDA meeting next week. So other opportunities to, you know, to look for some other funds.
Right.
If this carries into July. So I don't, I guess I'd make a motion, Mayor, that we allocate that $6,500 in Cheese Fest budget money to, you know, to helping our businesses in this time, to include the current proposal of $4,300 in tents.
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion.
Hey, Mr. Hildebrand, I sincerely appreciate your work on reaching out to the businesses on this, and thank you very much. When I was reading through the packet, would you be willing to explain to me a little bit better on how that insurance works when it comes to if the city is paying for these tents and they're on the property of the restaurants and something should happen, whether it's a storm or there's damage from a customer?
Yep.
Did I read that correctly? Is that under the business's insurance, or how does that work?
Yeah, Elizabeth helped me. We're going to have a waiver basically that they're going to sign, correct?
Correct. Bob put together a waiver for us that they could sign that just indemnifies the city, and they wouldn't be able to hold us liable if something did happen while they were using the tents. One of the restrictions for using the tents, and I've talked to the various businesses, is they will need to make sure that their insurance is extended to these new patio areas. So that will be one of the conditions, is that they'll need to talk to their insurance companies, because the majority of them, their liquor insurance will need to extend to the additional areas.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yes, I did want to just mirror everything that other council members have been saying, that during these times, we need to work to support our businesses as much as possible. And again, since we have the Cheese Fest funds there that obviously are not going to be used this year, I think this is a very financially responsible decision for us to make.
Any further discussion, comments? We'll do a roll call vote. Jason?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Kelly?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye also. Okay. I think we've got one other topic here. Let me get to my agenda. There's no planning commission, no public. We've got a public works topic. We've got the pool update. Todd's on board. It's remaining closed under Walsh's order. We're kind of hitting crunch time here. My question is, do we have to formally announce it's closed, or do we just float along with the governor's orders? I don't know. Todd, I'm interested in your comments, obviously.
Mr. Mayor and Todd, sorry, I'm gonna butt in here just because there's new information that was not included into the packet. So the newest executive order that Governor Walz signed yesterday, he specifically said that outdoor recreational pools are to remain closed in phase 2, which is what we're moving to on June 1st. So he has definitely said that as of June 1st, they will remain closed. On his Safe Minnesota plan, it doesn't show pools opening until phase 3, which none of us have known the date. I've heard everything from beginning of July to middle of July to end of July. So as of now, we have gotten official direction from the state that the newest order starting on June 1st, that pools are to remain closed.
How are other communities advertising that their pool is going to be open?
I'm not really sure how they're doing that. I think that they're maybe just contemplating staying open, that if the governor does allow the pools to open in any capacity, that they're maintaining that hope, I guess. My preference would be to make a decision one way or the other. If council decides to close the pool, it would make it a lot easier, especially for our pool manager, because then she wouldn't have to worry about keeping guards on standby. We could let guards know that they could find other summer jobs, things like that. They want to be pretty much waiting on the fence, trying to see what the governor would decide. Vice versa, if we think we may be opening at some point in the summer, then we could potentially try to solve the problem of not being able to certify these guards.
Well, and I know that's how the city of Winnemingo, they just announced right now that they are delaying their opening pending the governor's announcement. And, you know, that's also going to play into how they provide any kind of lessons for children over in Winnemingo, pending, you know, on how large of a group they can let in.
I can't, I do want to comment one more on the governor's Stay Safe Minnesota plan. When he says that pools may open in phase 3, the exact wording is that there is potential for phased opening with capacity restrictions. So I don't want to have a false hope either that pools will definitely open, because it says that they have a potential to open. So I do want to emphasize that too, that the governor hasn't said that they will open in phase 3. It's just, he has said that they have a potential. So I could foresee if they do open with the reduced capacity language, it seems that he likes to slowly open things at 25% capacity. So that's something to keep in mind too, that if there is a potential to open, that most likely it will be a very reduced capacity.
Right.
I have a question for maybe Todd or the pool manager. If we do open in July or whatever, will we even be able to be ready to get open to train these lifeguards to get everything up and running to even make sense of the season?
Pat's gonna come up here. She's with me here.
Just to answer that question, I know that the fire department aren't allowed to use the bag masks. That's what Red Cross is offering at this time in order to do CPR. We don't even own bag masks. And if the fire department can't use bag masks, how can we do bag masks at the pool?
Okay.
So that would be a concern. As far as training, we can't train new lifeguards. Red Cross has completely eliminated any in-pool training. They can do the line, and they can do the scenarios, and they can do the book work, but they're not allowed to do any online or any in-water training at all. And they can't sit on a lifeguard stand until they have performed the in-water tasks. And they're saying they're not even allowing that, and they're not sure until when.
So it's probably not going to happen then, if we got to go through all those hoops, you know. And it's not fair to the lifeguards to say, hey, just hold on, just wait. You might be able to work. I wouldn't blame them if they went and found other jobs.
Right, and you have people that are holding out for the positions, but I just told them that we don't know, and I hate for the kids that are graduating this year to hold out for those positions because they have college to pay for. I mean, they have other things that they're moving on to. I mean, I appreciate their dedication, but I don't want to give them false hope that, I mean, if salons and different facilities are not opening, and when you open to 25 capacity, the 25 capacity means your staff and the remaining people that you let in the door, and then they're only allowed in there for an hour.
Okay.
Then they're supposed to shut down and they're supposed to clean everything. Well, we can't do that. We'd have to clean after every single person went through. We would have, if they moved to a different location, we would have to clean those areas.
So to me, it doesn't make sense to open that.
Just to keep people safe, because you got to remember our clientele are under the age of 18.
Mhm.
And staff is under the age of 18. So do we need parent consent?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of strong arguments not to open it. I guess the comments I'm hearing, Pat, are all based on today's
Yeah.
situation.
Correct.
It's this is pretty fluid. And I'm not saying, and Elizabeth is right, we're not going to move into any kind of thought process on pools opening till phase 3, but what if phase 3 happens next week? I mean, I hate making long-term decisions on short-term information. Todd, I want you to give the council some benefits to not opening the pool. There are several.
Yeah, the benefits are, we can get the concession area open completely, because we've been approved to go ahead with that.
Yep.
We can install the rock climbing wall. We can put some funds towards the big slide. There's just some things we can improve at the pool. So there's some benefits.
Yeah.
It's not a total loss.
I agree.
And we all would
I'm
like
not-
kids to swim, but we want to be safe too. So
Absolutely. I'm not looking to prolong this discussion. It's a big decision. We were closed 2 years ago for the whole summer, and this will be the second out of 3 years where these kids have not had a pool that we spent $2.5 million on. But that being said, safety is always the prime driving force behind all this. So, well, council,
Personally, I'm not willing to commit on the 28th of May or whatever that we're not going to open the pool. Whatever today's date is, I'm just not. Yeah,
With all due respect to the comments that have been made, I think it is important to recognize, though, even in phase 3, whenever phase 3 may be, if we do reopen, there are all these restrictions that Pat and Elizabeth have mentioned before. Your sanitation, your short time frames, the training lifeguards would undergo. I understand there's almost two sides to the coin here. You have the safety concern and you have the logistics concern. You can argue all you want about the safety of it, but I don't think the logistics are going to be possible, even if we can open at part capacity. I don't think logistically we can make it work this summer.
well, it's already been announced by the Post Bulletin we weren't going to open anyway, I guess, which kind of upset me. But it's your call, council. I'll await a motion.
So since there seems to be hesitation before making a motion, can we put this to discuss at the June 17th or at the June council meeting? So make a motion that we're under governor's orders, still closed until we discuss at the next June council meeting?
we don't need a motion, do we? We're closed. Can't we just put it back on the June agenda? That seems to make the most sense.
I agree.
I think it's 95% that we're gonna close, but I'm one of those guys that likes to keep fighting until there's no reason to fight. But
Well, Mr. Mayor, like you said, I'm personally not ready to make that commitment just yet. When, we had talked before about waiting until the end of the month. I realize it's the 28th, but like you said, things could change within the next week. And I'm personally not ready to make that commitment to closing before the governor did that announcement.
yeah, we're closed now. We're not gonna alter our status. We're closed and until we get to phase 3, whenever that happens, phase 3 might not happen until August. So
Table it till June then.
Todd, you're gonna go ahead with your maintenance and fill in the pool and going through that whole thing anyway, right?
yeah, I just want to let you know that if you decide you're going to open it, it's just not going to open the next day.
Oh, yeah, no,
There's going to be
no
a couple
question.
weeks. So,
Yeah.
so you got to think of that too. That
Yep.
takes you a couple more weeks into the
Yep.
whole deal. I mean, I don't
Todd-
like it any more than anybody else because this has created a lot of problems for us. So.
Todd, I don't think you're in danger of, I'm going to speak for myself, but of any of us saying willy-nilly, we want to open the pool. I don't think we would say that until we had long, hard meetings with you and Pat but I just think it's too early to commit to the
So-
whole summer, a long time. So
Mr. Mayor and council members, the wording in the last meeting was that the pool would remain closed unless the governor opened it in his next executive order. So I think we would need a motion to readdress that.
Make a motion to table it till the next meeting.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion? Jason,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
I'll vote aye. And Pat, we don't want to leave you hanging here. We all appreciate what you do. It's just it's going to be a tough summer on our children, and lifeguards included. But I'm just hoping something can happen in a fairly short period. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Okay, well, that motion carries. Any other business we've got to discuss tonight?
No, that'd be it,
Mr.
Mr. Mayor. Oh,
Take a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
do we
sir.
have public input?
It's on the agenda. I'm not sure we have any. If you've got some, go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead, and this is for myself, given what's been going on with our council meetings and having to have several special council meetings, I'm going to be requesting that my council pay for these special meetings during the governor's executive orders right now with our having to do these social distancing and stuff like this. I'm asking that the city retain my special meeting council checks right now, given the financial situations going on. And I don't know if I have to go through some kind of a protocol for that. I'm just asking that the city keep my special council meeting checks right now.
Okay. That's very magnanimous. Anybody else feel the same way? I don't think anybody sitting at this table is doing it for the money, but.
No.
And I think the hard thing too is since things are so fluid, as we just discussed with the pool, you can't make a decision on one date and expect that decision to last for months and months. So whether or not you want to discuss the pay, I do think it's important that we're touching base as frequently as we are, because we owe it to the citizens of this community to serve them as best we can.
I don't know what the protocol is for you donating your pay back.
Mr. Freeze, I think the protocol would be that you would be paid that money, but then you could then return and donate back to the city.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, any further public input or discussion? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. Thank you so much, everybody. Go back to your busy lives and we'll see you all soon.